Now, the Razer Wolverine V3 Pro has been out for a bit now, and it follows the classic Xbox design, sharing ergonomics and familiarity in distances between thumbstick, buttons, D-pad, the usual. But under the hood, it's a completely different beast that a lot of us will be familiar with by now. The GameSir Tarantula is relatively younger and of course, kind of looks like a PlayStation controller, more so the PS4, not really the PS5s. It is slightly longer and looks super unique. This too is a very different beast underneath with a motor that changes the layout of the face. I'll just do that real quick, just kind of like that. I believe that's in switch mode right now, which I don't think is in any kind of controller anywhere, and that's kind of why I love GameSir, because they bother to try out new things that we probably have never thought of. Also, just a disclaimer, this video isn't for the super technical stuff. It's more to help out your average fella decide on which path to take. I've had a good amount of time with both controllers and there are a ton of creators out there for the technical bits, but if you want a starting point, this is it. These two wonderful controllers are at different tiers in terms of price range, but both are marketed as pro controllers with mappable buttons, different triggers, lighting, the whole nine. So let's get into the stuff that matters. Let's get started with what you get in the box for the GameSir Tarantula Pro. You got the controller, a USB-A to C cable that isn't braided like Razer's, a USB-A dongle, and instructions which are pretty darn big. It looks like it holds half the world's languages. Yeah, it's pretty big. Just kind of fold it to the language that you need, and you know, that's it. And if you paid a couple more bucks, you get this charging dock as well, which looks pretty damn good. The controller alone costs 98 Singapore dollars, and if you want to get it with the charging dock, that goes for $111. And with a $13 difference, it's kind of a no-brainer. The Razer Wolverine V3 Pro comes with a case by default. You get a braided USB-A to USB-C cable, which is the usual for them, options to change out the thumbsticks, and the controller itself, which is nothing to scoff at its current state, and its price tag of 299 Singapore dollars. Based on value alone, the GameSir edges out, like, obviously because it's significantly cheaper, so this doesn't really count towards my final verdict. Let's move on to design and ergonomics. Both controls are comfortable in hand, but what will make your gaming experience even more comfortable is a Secretlab chair. Here at Geek Culture, Secretlab is our everyday ergonomic buddy. Whether we're working, playing, or taking a quick nap, we feel less aches and more refreshed, even after sitting for long hours. Secretlab provides ergonomic support literally from head to toe, from dynamic lumbar support to their proprietary medium foam cushioning, and even premium footrests that promote circulation. That's good for you. For more information, check out secretlab.co. Talking about the feel of the GameSir first, it's really nice to hold, especially for someone with big hands like myself. However, it is kind of long even for me. It is a nice modern camo design and the grips are comfortable to wrap around. There are differing textures across the board with lines for the triggers and squares, I believe, around the back of the grips, which are pretty much the same areas and design as the Xbox controllers. In its entirety, it is a very unique design and won't take long to get used to. However, the extra buttons are placed in such a weird way that the C2 and C3 buttons, like down here, are macro to the start and select buttons by default, and I haven't assigned anything to the four of them other than what's been set because it's very awkward to engage them, which many people agree with. The travel time between the thumbsticks to the C1 and C4 buttons takes years compared to the Wolverine V3's buttons at the back, but I will say that I prefer the R4 and L4 buttons at the back of the Tarantula Pro because of how much further flushed in they are, and you can actually lock them in case you don't need to use them for whatever you're doing. It's great. Also, you can engage micro switches for the triggers just like the Wolverine. They got locks at the back over here and just, there we go. Disengage the lock. There we go. Overall, it's a great controller with just weird button placement, especially if you're playing FPSs or really fast-paced games like Marvel Rivals. However, you could probably use them for other things. You just gotta figure out what. Rather than it being concave for your thumbs to seep in like the Wolverine. Nothing wrong with that, it's a personal preference thing. The Tarantula is a good looking and clean controller. Also, this top bit here is actually two buttons, and just like the M1 and M2 buttons at the top of the Wolverine that I'll talk about a bit more later on, feel straight icky, they don't feel good, and I think you can do without them. The Razer Wolverine, on the other hand, was something that I initially and admittedly had, I wouldn't say trouble getting into, but I knew that I would take some time to get used to this because of how the four buttons protruded at the back of the controller. That and the M1 and M2 buttons at the top, which I talked about earlier on, are slightly harder to press down on than the triggers or, you know, the micro switches. And when you do need them on the fly, they don't really engage that well. My initial worries were that people will be hitting the back buttons accidentally, especially in tense situations. And I kind of realized that I haven't had that issue in the last last few months. Though, again, I would still prefer what GameSir has done, mainly because of how much they wing out. Again, this is very preference-based because depending on how you set up your button schemes for whichever game you play, you're gonna either love it or hate it, and I think what Razer has done with this is way better than its previous design. In this case, both controllers are tied with pros and cons, and though I do really like playing with the Wolverine more because of how much space I have to play around with, I go with the GameSir in this department at least. But there's something I need to point out. The GameSir buttons are membrane based, but the D-pad is tactile. It's just weird. Where the Wolverine's buttons are tactile across the board, so make what you will of this information. I'm not sure what led GameSir to this design choice, but it kind of messes with me in a small way from time to time. If you're particular about feel, you need to take that into consideration. Next up is Hall Effect versus TMR, and TMR wins hands down. The TMRs are more accurate, take up less power, and are slightly less likely to drift compared to Hall Effects because the more traditional Hall Effects use a spring to recenter the thumbsticks, and some companies have done away with them entirely, but I can say that in this case, TMRs will always be more accurate. So I hope the next few Razer controllers have TMRs once they come up with an edgier name than GameSir's MagRes TMR. TMRs also have a much higher sampling and polling rate than Hall Effects, so that explains the accuracy and how that translates into your input. Also, TMR stands for tunneling magnetoresistance. Hall Effect sensors use magnets and measures the differences in electrical voltages to, measure your inputs. TMRs uses ferromagnetism and quantum tunneling, and that allows you to pick up on even smaller movements than Hall Effects. And I've got a vid that should be running to show that case, the kind of comparison here. The Hall Effects on the Wolverines will register the small movements, yes, as shown in this clip here. And coming up next, the Tarantula Pro's TMRs are registering even more movement than the Halls with the same amount of movement that my hand is putting out, which is really cool. And before anyone says anything, I set the DIT zones to 0 on both their respective apps so that it's fair. And now's a good time to get into their apps. Gamesir Connect is massive in the sense that there's a lot you can do, but the fact of the matter is that there is more to do in the GameSir app because the controller has a much wider range of lighting options, whether it's for its RGB bar on the top over here that can change up depending on what you're using it for. And the way it does that is with this little mechanical switch inside the controller, and the controller physically changes the buttons up with this little mechanical switch right here. You're able to switch up the controller's modes for different platforms like the Nintendo Switch, PC, Android, and iOS, and you edit the controller using the GameSir Connect app on phones and the PC. And speaking of the Switch, this is a great Pro Switch controller if you ever needed one, and there's even NFC for your amiibos, which is nice. The Razer Setup app has everything you need, and that's a good thing because you go in, you edit what you need, it's easy to navigate, and bam, you're out and you're gaming. The Razer Wolverine V3 Pro is purely set on being an Xbox and PC controller, and it excels in those fields. And because it's focused, what you see is what you get with the promised performance. Before you think of purchasing this, I would like to make a note that the Xbox Elite controller has more things in the box, so just keep that in mind. But if you don't want that many options, just something really laser focused, this is great. The Tarantula is focused on being that versatile controller for several platforms, and the mechanical switch is pretty cool at the price it's set at. You press its home button here with a corresponding button, and you will switch up its modes. And I think I'm going to PC mode right now. Yes, I am. And let me just go back to the Switch mode. Just like that. That's pretty cool. It's a neat concept you don't see anywhere else except from a company that pushes out controllers like they're fighting with their lives on the line. I played Marvel Rivals with Black Widow for mostly hit scan stuff with her rifle and some melee, and between the two controllers, I think I perform better with the GameSir because of those TMRs, man. They really make a difference. I can still perform with the Razer Wolverine V3 Pro with no issues, but there is a difference between the Hall Effects and the TMRs, and it can be felt through my gaming sessions. And again, I hope Razer hops on the TMR train because once they do that, they will truly be in the running to lead the industry. TMR sensors in controllers are a relatively recent thing, but TMR as a concept, theory, or whatever has been around since like 1975, and thank God it's being applied to gaming right now. We are really looking at the next step of gaming with these TMR sensors, and poof, GameSir has done absolutely well. There are kits online to switch out certain controllers, so if you really want to try TMRs without, just kind of committing to a whole controller, you can probably get those instead. Also, I almost forgot, vibrations on these two controllers are the same as the Xbox with a whole two weights brewing thing on both sides of the controllers, but nothing beats the haptic feedback on DualSense controllers for the PS5. Lastly, I would include battery life, but to be honest, if you're getting the Tarantula, also GameSir, please put in the manufacturer's rating for battery life, like in the main page, like other companies. But there's an estimated 12 to 20 hours of battery life on the GameSir Tarantula Pro, being played wirelessly by various sources since GameSir doesn't display these stats, and 20 hours for the Wolverine on the Razer website. All of which don't really matter to me because I will charge them up after play. My final thoughts, there are a great many technical aspects that won't be covered because again, we're the starting point, and no, I won't be leaving you with a yes, A, it's more expensive so buy B because it's cheaper. But the fact of the matter is that TMR wins, baby. The Wolverine is by no means a bad controller. Hell, it's far from bad, and from my initial assessment of course. But if there was a way to switch out the Hall effects on this Wolverine to TMRs, it would have beat out the GameSir easy because it's laser focused on being an Xbox and PC controller. I prefer the look and feel of the Wolverine since it's a lot cleaner and bigger, but the Tarantula just looks so cool and unique. Not to mention the switching of the modes, it's proper sick. So yes, Tarantula Pro gets the win by a very small margin, but more importantly, what do you guys think? Would you want to save cash and go with something that works for several platforms, or something that works damn well for one platform? Let me know in the comments below, and if you have any questions about either controller, I will do my best to get back to you. If you like what we do, make sure to follow us on all of our socials right here. We put out stuff every day, and if you like what we do here on YouTube, maybe like this video and subscribe to us. It helps us out a lot. This has been Zin. If you want to see more stuff, check this out.